Hello, everyone, and welcome to the thru Recovery Life Podcast. This was written by John A., myself in West Palm Beach. My sobriety date is September 13th of 1982, using the outline from the Back to Basics book by Wally P. We're going to start off with a quote by Albert Einstein. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. In this session, we're doing the 12 Steps to Freedom workshop, where we will go through the 12 steps in less than 4 hours. This video will cover steps 7 through 12. The first video covered steps 1 through 6. We will still have some live events on Zoom in the future, but for all intents and purposes, we have moved our workshops to the podcast format to make them available to more people. You know, you could be any place right now, but instead you're here with us listening to our podcast. And we're happy to have you here making this investment in your sobriety. You're making a huge deposit into your IRA, your individual recovery account, by being here and participating. Keep making these deposits no matter how small, because one day you may have a situation that will require you to make a huge withdrawal, and you don't want your IRA to be depleted. We're going to be using the 12 and 12 in the big book to go through the 12 steps, and we will be sharing our experience, strength, and hope with you on the 12 steps to help us all get a better understanding of the steps and how to apply them in our everyday life. And this is from page 15 of the 12 and 12. AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which, if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. Some of you might be thinking that it's impossible to go through the 12 steps in just 4 hours, but it's not. In fact, that's how they did it in the early days of AA. And this is from page 263 of the big book. It was Dr. Bob's afternoon off. He had me to the office, and we spent 3 or 4 hours formally going through the 6-step program as it was at that time. The 6 steps were 1. Complete deflation, 2. Dependence and guidance from a higher power, 3. Moral inventory, 4. Confession, 5. Restitution, 6. Continued work with other alcoholics. Dr. Bob led me through all these steps. At the moral inventory, he brought up several of my bad personality traits or character defects, such as selfishness, conceit, jealousy, carelessness, intolerance, ill temper, sarcasm, and resentments. We went over these at great length, and then he finally asked me if I wanted these defects of character removed. When I said yes, we both knelt at his desk and prayed, each of us asking to have these defects taken away. So there were only 6 steps at that time, and Bill expanded them into 12 steps when he wrote the big book. But those 6 steps still encompass all of the principles we have in the current 12 steps. A prospect could not attend an AA meeting until he had taken the steps back then. He didn't even know where the meetings were held at that time until someone sponsored him into the meeting. And I'm not going to say that AA was more effective then as opposed to now, but I will say that people are dying needlessly because they are procrastinating and taking the 12 steps. Even if they're not dying, they are suffering longer than they need to. How soon do you want to be happy, joyous, and free? If your house was on fire, you would have a sense of urgency to get that fire out. If you had a life-threatening disease, you would have a sense of urgency in getting on the path to recovery. Freedom from the obsession of alcohol comes in taking the 12 steps. Your life is in danger. Have a sense of urgency in taking the 12 steps and having them become a way of life for you sooner than later. That feeling of being happy, joyous, and free comes from taking the 12 steps. The steps help us work on the underlying issues behind alcoholism. If alcohol was the problem, many of us would be cured by now. Alcohol was but a symptom. Do you want to know how to get in a position of neutrality and get a great defense against that first sucker drink? It is through the 12 steps of AA. Quitting drinking is easy as pie. Anybody can quit drinking. And everyone listening to this podcast now has quit drinking at some point in time prior to coming into AA. The problem was staying stopped. And that's where AA and the 12 steps come into play. If alcohol was the problem, treatment centers would have a 99.9% success rate. You could go to jail for a weekend and stop drinking. Again, everyone listening to this podcast has stopped drinking even before coming into AA, but could not stay stopped. Even if it was for an hour, or half a day, or perhaps a week, you had stopped, but didn't know how to stay stopped. In AA, we are able to stay stopped one day at a time. By taking the 12 steps and practicing the principles behind the steps, we become someone who no longer needs to drink. The key to staying stopped is not to pick up that first drink. And we're all one drink away from a drunk. That's a fact. And the goal for today is to get you 12 plus steps away from that first sucker drink. If you listen to both videos, if you listen to the whole podcast on all the 12 steps, you'll have taken all the steps except steps 4, 5, 8, and 9. You will get a cursory knowledge of those steps, but you will need to get someone to help you with those steps. And you can be on step 9 within a few days. And before going any further, I have a few questions I'd like each person here to answer. Are you willing to go to any lengths to get sober and stay sober? Yes or no? Do you want to be happy, joyous, and free? Yes or no? If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. And we're on step 7. Step 7. Humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. And this is a great quote by C.S. Lewis. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. 12 and 12, page 70. Since this step so specifically concerns itself with humility, we should pause here to consider what humility is and what the practice of it can mean to us. 12 and 12, page 76. The 7th step is where we make the change in our attitude which permits us, with humility as our guide, to move out from ourselves toward others and toward God. The whole emphasis of step 7 is on humility. It is really saying to us that we now ought to be willing to try humility and seeking the removal of our other shortcomings, just as we did when we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Without God, I can't. Without me, He won't. God will not remove a single defect of character from us without us taking some action. He will help us help ourselves if we are willing and humble enough, and if we take action. You cannot continue to curse and expect God to snap His fingers and make you stop cursing. You must make a conscious effort to stop cursing, and your higher power will help you. You cannot pray for a job and expect to get one if you don't take some action and fill out job applications. You can pray all you want to win the lottery, but nothing will happen if you don't buy a ticket. Again, without God I can't, and without me He won't. Faith without works is dead. And this is from the Big Book, page 76. Many call this the 7th step prayer. When ready, we say something like this: My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. We have then completed step 7. And in my opinion, we never complete step 6 and 7. The Big Book doesn't say we have completed any of the other steps. If alcohol is not the problem, then our character defects are the root cause of our problems and something we need to work on for the rest of our lives. We live in steps 6, 7, along with steps 10, 11, and 12. And this brings us to step 8. Step 8. Made a list of all persons we have harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 12 and 12, page 77. Steps 8 and 9 are concerned with personal relations. First, we take a look backward and try to discover where we had been at fault. Next, we make a vigorous attempt to repair the damage we have done. And third, having thus cleaned away the debris of the past, we consider how, with our newfound knowledge of ourselves, we may develop the best possible relations with every human being we know. Big Book, page 76. Now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at step 8. We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. In the 80s, they used to tell us to burn our 4th step once we did the 5th step. And I still suggest that to people nowadays because you don't want that 4th step laying around for others to see. I also don't think the 4th step inventory has much to do with the 8th step list because you don't owe someone an amends just because you had a resentment against them unless you took action and did something or said something to them. Sometimes we have a resentment and the other person doesn't even know it. The 8th step starts the process of forgiving others and perhaps being forgiven by them. By forgiving others, we start forgiving ourselves and start learning how to live at peace and harmony in the world. By the time we reach this step, we have become ready to understand rather than to be understood. We can live and let live easier when we know the areas in which we owe amends. Okay, how should we make this amends list? It is recommended that you get a blank sheet of paper and make 3 columns. The first columns, put down the names of those people you're willing to make amends to right away. Second column, put down the names of those people you're willing to make amends to in the future. And the third column, put down the names of those people that you will never, ever, never, ever, never make amends to. And it is really best to have tunnel vision when doing this step. Only focus on step 8 and making that list. Don't worry about step 9. Just make the list. And you don't have to go back to kindergarten when you're making out your list. Put down the names of those people that come to mind without any real thought being put into it. In your heart, you know who you've done wrong and need to make amends to. You don't have to worry about making your amends list 100% accurate. Don't worry about making this list deep and searching. Just do the list. You have the 10th step to add any names that you may have initially forgotten. You can add names to your list until you die because there may be something or someone not on your list today that you genuinely don't think you owe an amends to, but 20, 30 years from now, it may dawn on you that you owe that person an amends. And please, don't worry about whether or not you should add your name to the amends list. And don't worry about whether you should put your name first or last or in the middle. Just make the list. Don't waste time. It is a waste of time because you're going to make amends to yourself whether you put your name on the list or not. And then don't worry about prioritizing your list either. Just write the names, just put the names down. And the concept of harm as it relates to the eighth step is one that has various meanings. This is from the 12 and 12, page 80. We might next ask ourselves what we mean when we say that we have harmed other people. What kinds of harm do people do to one another anyway? To define the word harm in a practical way, we might call it the result of instincts in collision, which cause physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual damage to people. If our tempers are consistently bad, we arouse anger in others. If we lie or cheat, we deprive others not only of their worldly goods, but of their emotional security and peace of mind. We really issue them an invitation to become contemptuous and vengeful. And you may not have stolen a single thing from your parents or relatives or friends. You may have gotten along very well with them and repaid them for every single cent they ever spent on you for one reason or another. So how could you possibly have harmed them? Why should they be on your amends list? Well, think about the peace of mind that you stole from them. Think about how they worried about you. They stayed up nights worrying about you, waiting for that phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning. Are you in jail? Are you in the morgue? Are you in the hospital? Are you stranded somewhere that they need to come get you? We have done more harm than we can even imagine. I'll never forget a story that I heard an AA speaker say. He talked about his mother thanking him after he quit drinking because she could now go down to the corner store and buy a gallon of milk. Did he kidnap her and lock her up to prevent her from going to the corner store? No, not really. It turns out that his mother's friends would often be at the corner talking about their kids and how well their kids were doing. She, on the other hand, had nothing good to say about her son, so eventually she avoided her friends as much as possible and had to go to an out-of-the-way store. But after he quit drinking and turned his life around, she could then start going back to the corner store and visit with her friends, because now she had good things to say about her son also. So again, we can't imagine the harm that we have done to others. And that's why they need to be on your list. And in the ninth step, we'll talk about how you can make amends to them, even if they don't want anything from you. So after making the list, let's evaluate your willingness to make the amends, especially the names in the third column. The ones that you'll never, ever, never, ever, never make amends to. The ones that hell will have to freeze over before you even think about making the amends to them. Well, your task now is to pray for the willingness to make those amends sometime in the future. And this ends step 8. And please, we highly suggest that you get someone to go over the list with you before you make any amends. And this brings us to step 9. Step 9. Make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And this quote is from an unknown source. The best amends is changed behavior. Big Book, page 76. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. 12 and 12, page 83. After we have made the list of all people we have harmed, have reflected carefully upon each instance, and have tried to possess ourselves of the right attitude in which to proceed, we will see that the making of direct amends divides those we should approach into several classes. There will be those who are to be dealt with just as soon as we become reasonably confident that we can maintain our sobriety. There will be those to whom we can only make partial restitution, lest complete disclosures do them or others more harm than good. There will be other cases where action ought to be deferred, and still others in which, by the very nature of the situation, we shall never be able to make direct personal contact at all. And what's the difference between an apology and an amends? What does AA mean when they refer to amends? Well, I'd like to expand on the definition of amends a bit by saying that making an amends means making things right between us, making a person whole again. I think it's also based on the severity of the wrong and the passage of time that differentiates an amends from an apology. If you step on someone's toes, you don't owe them an amends. An apology or a simple "I'm sorry" is fine. If you break a date at the last minute, an apology is also fine, unless that date was to meet at the altar. Some people act as though those words are interchangeable, and they're not. I think an amends is recommended when the damage or injury was egregious, and with some time lapse, some passage of time. For example, if a wooden fence has a loose board, then all you need to do is hammer that board in. If you let a few months or a few years go by, then you really need to mend that fence. And please try your best not to use the word sorry in your amends. The word apology is totally acceptable during the amends process. And it is a great idea to have someone go over the list with you to ensure that you really need to make amends to the person, as well as planning the best course of action for making the amends. Each individual name should have its own course of action for making the amends. And Bill Wilson did not just arbitrarily choose the words wherever instead of whenever when writing this step, and the words are not interchangeable. This is from the 12 and 12, page 83. Good judgment, a careful sense of timing, courage, and prudence. These are the qualities we shall need when we take step 9. Big Book, page 79. Although these reparations take innumerable forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding. Reminding ourselves that we had decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience, we ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing. We have to be. We must not shrink at anything. Okay, now to the heart of the situation. How do we go about making the amends? It's best to make the amends directly, as it says in the 9th step. And I interpret direct as meaning in person, face to face. Second option for making direct amends is via the phone, but not in a text message or email. The third option is by postal mail. If making the amends will cause more harm than good to that person, then it's best not to make a direct amends. How about if you cannot make amends because the person is dead or the company is no longer in business? You can make indirect amends. How about if your parents only want you to stay sober and don't need you to pay back money you may owe them? Well, you owe a lot more than money. You owe peace of mind to your loved ones and friends. What should you do besides make a living amends? Is an amends without follow-up action enough? And this is from the Big Book, page 82. The alcoholic is like a tornado, roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken. Sweet relationships are dead. Affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. He is like the farmer who came up out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" And what exactly is follow-up action? It's pretty simple. It means that words mean very little. It's our actions that count the most. If you owe money to the IRS or any other debtor, call them and make payment plans, but be prepared to send them some money right away. Whatever it is, be ready to send some amount of money. How about if you owe back child support or alimony? Call them and make arrangements to start sending money, but again, enclose a check. Send some money along with the letter. And once you've started on this 9-step journey, you'll be shocked at how your higher power will help you in getting it done. For example, if you were born and raised in Alaska, but now you're living in Mexico, you'll be surprised. Once you get in this 9th-step mindset, you'll be surprised at the people from Alaska that you'll see at the airport, at the grocery store, different places, people that you can make amends to. Your higher power will help you. And step 9 is all about you. It's about cleaning up your side of the street. The person you're making amends to may have done you considerably more harm than you did to them, but this is about you accepting responsibility for your own actions, admitting your faults. And this is from the Big Book, pages 77, 78. The question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. It may be he has done us more harm than we have done him, and though we may have acquired a better attitude toward him, we are still not too keen about admitting our faults. Nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. It is harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial to us. We go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Simply, we tell them that we will never get over our drinking until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past. We are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so, never trying to tell him what he should do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the result. And step 9 is a very tall order indeed, but one that will help you in many ways. This is another one of those steps that's very freeing. You'll be able to look at yourself and others in the eyes. Self-esteem is built up by doing esteemable acts, and making the amends will build up your self-esteem. You'll be able to go anywhere without feeling that you must watch your back. You'll be able to answer the door again. You'll be able to let go of the past. You'll be able to answer the phone again. You'll be able to open your mail. You'll put on a new pair of glasses. And as I stated earlier, the best amends is changed behavior. And something else, you do not want to mess up your amends with an excuse. And this is from the Big Book, page 82. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is to keep sober. Certainly he must keep sober, for there will be no home if he doesn't. But he is yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he has so shockingly treated. And the Big Book sums up some of the benefits of step 9 much better than I can. And this is from the Big Book, pages 83, 84, on the 9th step promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. we're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. And again, these are the 9th step promises. And Dr. Bob relapsed because he didn't want the people in Akron to know that he was an alcoholic, so he didn't want to make his amends. He started making amends the same day he stopped drinking again. So if you relapse on any step, you should just continue from where you relapsed. There is no need to go back to step 1 unless you had reservations about being an alcoholic. And please, get a sponsor to go over the list with you and devise a course of action for each person on your list. There will be people that you have on your 8th step that your sponsor will cross off. You don't make amends to your drug dealer. You don't make amends to your ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, ex-spouse, if you do not have children with them. So please get that sponsor, get a guide before making any amends. And with that, we're going to continue on to step 10. Step 10. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 10 is a very simple and pretty much self-explanatory step. And steps 10, 11, and 12 are what many members of AA refer to as the maintenance steps. These maintenance steps can be started on your very first day in the AA program. And this is from the Big Book, page 84. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. So any new mistakes would be any mistakes you make after coming into Alcoholics Anonymous. And it continues, we vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So I'm not saying you just skip 1 through 9 and do 10, 11, and 12, because you clean up the past with steps 1 through 9. You do 10, 11, and 12 while you're doing steps 1 through 9. And it continues. We have entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Okay, so really you're doing steps 6 and 7 as well. Because what are selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear? Character defects. And it continues. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. Just as rigorous honesty and humility were required for steps 4 and 5, they are also required for step 10. Step 6 and 7 provided us with a list of character defects which all human beings possess. Therefore, it's a very simple process to determine when we're at fault and need to do something about it. Unfortunately, like many of the other 12 steps, simple does not mean easy. Who the heck wants to go around admitting when they're wrong? While in AA, we must do this if we are to have long-term contented sobriety. This is the beginning of being happy, joyous, and free. And this is from the 12 and 12, page 88. As we work the first 9 steps, we prepare ourselves for the adventure of a new life. But when we approach step 10, we commence to put our AA way of living to practical use, day by day, in fair weather or foul. Then comes the acid test. Can we stay sober, keep an emotional balance, and live to good purpose under all conditions? And again, by starting steps 10, 11, and 12 very early in Alcoholics Anonymous, this is how you recover sooner than later in AA. You can recover very quickly in Alcoholics Anonymous. You can become happy, joyous, and free sooner than later. It's all about having these steps become a way of life for you sooner than later. And to continue with step 10, Big Book, page 62. Selfishness, self-centeredness. That, we think, is the root of our troubles. Driven by a hundred form of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows, and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past, we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. Big Book, page 86. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Now, the previous two paragraphs are found under step 11 in the Big Book, but they apply to step 10 as well. And this is from the Big Book, pages 84, 85. What we call the 10th step promises in Alcoholics Anonymous. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And the 10th step helps us stay in fit spiritual condition. And this is from the 12 and 12, pages 89, 90. The emphasis on the inventory is heavy only because a great many of us have never really acquired the habit of accurate self-appraisal. Once this healthy practice has been groomed, it will be so interesting and profitable that the time it takes won't be missed. For these minutes and sometimes hours spent in self-examination are bound to make all the other hours of our day better and happier. And at length, our inventories become a regular part of everyday living rather than unusual or set apart. And you can do a personal inventory many times a day. And when you do it, you don't have to look only for times that you're wrong. Look for things that you did or said that made you feel good so that you can try to repeat and improve on them. Remember, I think it's Maya Angelou who said this. People may not always remember what you say, they may not remember what you do, but they will never forget how you make them feel. And it's best to have someone depart feeling better after engaging in a conversation with you. And this is from the 12 and 12, page 93. When evening comes, perhaps just before going to sleep, many of us draw up a balance sheet for the day. This is a good place to remember that inventory taking is not always done in red ink. It's a poor day indeed when we haven't done something right. As a matter of fact, the waking hours are usually well filled with things that are constructive. Good intentions, good thoughts, and good acts are there for us to see. Even when we have tried hard and failed, we may chalk that up as one of the greatest credits of all. Under these conditions, the pains of failure are converted into assets. Out of them, we receive the stimulation we need to go forward. And the 12 steps need to become a way of life for you, and the 10th step will help you stay on the right track and move forward and grow. Because you may be on the right track, but if you're not moving forward, you will get run over. And we will never be out of the woods with alcoholism, but with AA, we now have a design for living. Restraint of pen, tongue, and in this day and age, the send button will keep you from eating crow or having egg on your face too often. And the 10th step is a filter that works between your mind and your mouth. And this is from the 12 and 12, page 15. AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which, if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. So please, you can start doing the steps 10, 11, and 12 very early in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's how you recover quickly in AA. You can this can become a way of life for you sooner than later. Will you continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as you go along? Yes or no? If you've answered yes, then you're now living in step 10. And we move on to step 11. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And please remember, meditation does not mean emptying your mind. As a human being, chances are you will never be able to empty your mind unless you're dead. And this is from the 12 and 12, page 96. Prayer and meditation are our principal means of conscious contact with God. And Big Book, page 86. We also read this in the 10th step, but this is under step 11, but it applies in step 10 as well, and we read it there. Big Book, page 86. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. And this is from the Big Book, page 87. What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely on it. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're 100% correct. If you think you can't, you probably won't. If you think you can, you have a pretty good shot at it. Napoleon Hill said, "What the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve." Man did not think a 4-minute mile was possible until 1954 when Roger Bannister did it. And the human mind is a very powerful organ. It is much more powerful and complex than any computer. In the same way that we develop a bad habit through repetition, we can develop good habits. Develop good habits through repetition. And this is from the 12 and 12, page 104. In AA, we have found that the actual good results of prayer are beyond question. They are matters of knowledge and experience. All those who have persisted have found strength not ordinarily their own. They have found wisdom beyond their usual capability. And they have increasingly found a peace of mind which can stand firm in the face of difficult circumstances. Many members of AA know how to pray already, or learn how to pray early in the AA program. AA teaches us not to pray for ourselves and not to pray for specific things or outcomes, but many others have problems meditating. Meditation is not hard and it's not complicated. This is from the 12 and 12, page 99. The St. Francis Prayer. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen. As beginners in meditation, we might now reread this prayer several times very slowly, savoring every word and trying to take in the deep meaning of each phrase and idea. And as I said in the beginning, you do not have to clear your mind to meditate. And the last sentence in the reading from the 12 and 12 says, as beginners in meditation, we might now reread this prayer several times very slowly, savoring every word and trying to take in the deep meaning of each phrase and idea. Have you ever read a paragraph or a page in a book but don't remember doing so? You didn't forget what you read. Have you ever been introduced to someone and less than 5 minutes later you don't remember their name? You didn't forget their name. Your feet were in the room, but your mind was someplace else. Be where your feet are. Stay in the moment. And remember, the human mind can only entertain one thought at a time. So if you're focusing on what you're reading, you're not thinking about the negative thoughts that enter your mind, several times, 500 million times a day. Just focus on what you're doing. If you're washing the dishes, focus on washing the dishes. If you're vacuuming, focus on vacuuming. If you're reading, focus on each word. If you're listening to a song, focus on the words in the song. You can even have one breath meditation. Focus on your one breath. And again, the human mind can only entertain one thought at a time. And I've done a meeting called Prayer and Meditation Made Simple, where we will time the St. Francis prayer. It's under a minute. So if you focus on the St. Francis prayer, you're meditating for about a minute. The Lord's Prayer, we timed that, and that was about less than 35 seconds. So again, if you focus on saying the Lord's Prayer, you're meditating for about 35 seconds or so. We did that with the Serenity Prayer as well. And the Serenity Prayer came up to about 13 seconds. So if you focus on saying the Serenity Prayer, you're meditating for about 13 seconds. And you can meditate anytime. You can meditate in your car. You can meditate at a red light or waiting for the train to go by. Keep your big book in the car. This is from the big book, page 88. Step 11 promises. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. 12 and 12, page 105. Perhaps one of the greatest rewards of meditation and prayer is the sense of belonging that comes to us. We no longer live in a completely hostile world. We are no longer lost and frightened and purposeless. And some members of AA say that they wake up with untreated alcoholism every day. I've never heard a cancer patient say that they wake up with untreated cancer when they are under a doctor's care. Why would someone wake up with untreated alcoholism if they are living the principles of the AA program? The person who truly wakes up with untreated alcoholism is not aware of it, nor would they admit it. And step 11 is the main reason that many do not wake up with untreated alcoholism, no matter what may be going on in their life. And you can pray at any time of the day or night. You don't have to pray as soon as you wake up. I've heard people say, oh, my day went bad because I forgot to pray in the morning. You don't have to pray in the morning. Or you don't have to pray only in the morning. You can pray at any time, at any point. Personally, I'll jump in a bathroom stall and get on my knees and start praying if I feel anxious, if I'm afraid. And I've been sober over 39 years, and I've done that throughout my sobriety. At 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of sobriety, especially when I was working, and my name would come over the intercom at work. Please report to the manager's office. Panic would set in, especially if I knew they had a valid reason for calling me in there. I would jump in a bathroom stall, get on my knees, and say the Serenity Prayer, the Lord's Prayer, and then on my way to the office, I would just keep telling myself, relax, John, relax. You don't know anything. You don't know anything. Not that I'm stupid, only I don't know why they're calling me in there, so just relax. And as I'm telling myself to relax, that's all I'm focusing on. So yes, please, you can pray at any point in time, any place at all. Again, if you go to our website at thezooCrew.org, there'll be a link there which says the benefits of prayer and meditation, when and where to meditate and pray. And you're now living in step 11, or you can be, you should be. Again, how soon do you want to be happy, joyous, and free? And why can't you start doing steps 10, 11, and 12 your first day? Step 10, continue to take personal inventory. If you get a sponsor your very first day in Alcoholics Anonymous, every time you talk to that sponsor, you're going to be doing a 10th step. Prayer and meditation. Why can't you start praying your very first day in AA? And I understand meditation, they say the worst thing is for a newcomer to be in their own head. But again, the Serenity Prayer takes about 13 seconds or less. Just say the Serenity Prayer and you'll be meditating. And the principle behind step 12 is service. Why can't you start being of service your very first day in AA? You will not have an AA message yet, but you have your own message. So if you picked up a white chip today, you can talk to the person tomorrow. You can talk to the person thinking about picking up a white chip. So that's how you recover quickly in Alcoholics Anonymous. All right, and with that, we're on to step 12. Step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And the terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which upon careful reading shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. How happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. And this is from the Big Book, page 567, Appendix 2. When I believe it, well, the first printing of the Big Book had read, having had a spiritual experience. And then people started writing to Bill in New York, telling him, "Hey, Bill, we haven't had this this white light experience that you've had." And I believe it's the second printing of the first edition that they changed it to Spiritual Awakening. Either that or the second edition itself. But originally it was having had a spiritual experience. And then when they changed that to Spiritual Awakening, they also added Appendix 2 to clarify spiritual experience and spiritual awakening. And a spiritual awakening, as referred to in AA, is simply a change of heart and mind. Our spiritual awakening is of the educational kind. It should be a continuous lifetime process. Sometimes it is a spiritual experience or spiritual awakening which pushes someone to seek help even before starting the 12 steps of AA. And as previously stated, a spiritual awakening is of the educational kind, whereas a spiritual experience is usually a profound and sudden physical experience which quickly dissipates but leaves a person changed for a long time and sometimes forever. And this is from the Big Book, page 89. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. Life will take on a new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. So AA cannot survive if individual members do not carry the message of recovery in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous. AA groups cannot survive if they do not carry the message of recovery to individual members. And are you involved in your sobriety, or are you committed? Here's an example. In a bacon and egg breakfast, the chicken is involved, but the pig is committed. And the individual cannot remain spiritually fit if they do not carry the message of recovery to others in and outside of AA. The Dead Sea is named as such because it does not sustain normal life forms because it is too salty. The River Jordan flows into it, but the water does not go anywhere else after that. If we as individuals get all this good AA stuff and hold on to it without sharing it with anyone else, we will eventually become spiritually dead. There is usually a natural filtration process that takes place when a liquid flows into something and then flows out into something else. And this is from the 12 and 12, page 110. Practically every AA member declares that no satisfaction has been deeper and no joy greater than in a 12-step job well done. To watch the eyes of men and women open with wonder as they move from darkness into light, to see their lives quickly fill with new purpose and meaning, to see whole families reassembled, to see the alcoholic outcast received back into his community in full citizenship, and above all, to watch these people awaken to the presence of a loving God in their lives. These things are the substance of what we received as we carried AA message to the next alcoholic. I have two quotes that I would love to share with you. The first one is by Muhammad Ali. Service to others is the rent you pay for your own room here on earth. Service to others is the rent you pay for your own room here on earth, Muhammad Ali. And the next one is William Blake. I sought my soul, but my soul I could not see. I sought my God, but my God eluded me. I sought my brother, and I found all three. Here's a question for you. Will you carry the message of recovery to other alcoholics? Yes or no? Will you be of service to people in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous? Yes or no? If you've answered yes to both questions, then you are now living in step 12. And in closing, the message that we carry is that of hope. No hope, no recovery. No hope, no recovery. So N-O hope, N-O recovery, K-N-O-W hope, K-N-O-W recovery. After the Big Book was published in 1939, after the Big Book was published in April of 1939, people would order the book, read it, follow the directions contained in the book, get sober, and start their own meetings and help others get sober. People from around the country and around the world would do this. That's how AA quickly grew. And again, I've said this a few times, you can recover quickly in Alcoholics Anonymous by having the 12 steps become a way of life for you sooner than later. And this is from page 15 of the 12 and 12. AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which, if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. And this is from the Big Book, page 25. There is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. When, therefore, we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. Hopefully, you have more tools in your spiritual toolkit now. Please do your fourth and eighth step. Get a sponsor and do your fifth, and help guide you into making your ninth step amends. You can get this done this week. Have that sense of urgency we talked about in the beginning. Your life depends on you staying sober. And we're not talking about rushing through these steps. We're not talking about rushing through anything. We're just talking about having a sense of urgency. Have a sense of urgency. This is your life. This is a matter of life and death. And think about the hope that is conveyed in the passage below. This is from the Big Book, page 164. And like I said, people would order the book, read it, follow the directions contained in the book, get sober, start their own meetings, and help others get sober. And when they get to this part of the book, think about the hope they feel. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. And we're going to close out this podcast with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And thank you everyone for listening to the thru Recovery Life Podcast. In this episode we did the 12 steps to freedom in less than 4 hours. This video covered steps 7 through 12. The first video covered steps 1 through 6. And again, this was written by John A. in West Palm Beach, using the outline from the Back to Basics book by Wally P. My sobriety date is September 13th of 1982. You can visit our website at thezooCrew.org, thezooCrew.org. Please feel free to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can be notified when we upload new videos. Feel free to comment and share this video with others in recovery or looking to get sober. And again, thank you very much. And I hope to hear from you. Thank you. Bye-bye.